Venice is a maze, is a city that speaks to the heart and that makes your inner self vibrate. Come on and let you go. Follow me through the maze. I'm Susanna and I'm an authorized professional guide, and I would like to be your ambassador to the heritage of this incredible place. This itinerary starts from Fondamenta San Giuseppe that can be reached from the water bus stop named Giardini. First of all, I should explain the meaning of Fondamenta, because you have to know that in Venice most of the streets have actually different names. Normally they are referred to as calle, C-A-L-L-E, that it's a word that derives from the Latin meaning muddy path, and otherwise if the street is along a canal then takes the name of Fondamenta. You can find also Salizzada, that is a paved street, because also in the past the streets were not paved, so they were covered with grass and dirt, so that's why muddy path. Or otherwise you can find, for example, Corte, which is courtyard. You can find Campo, which is a square. And also most of the streets have interesting names, always deriving from facts of everyday's life, like for example different jobs or interesting people that lived around that area. So just reading the names of the streets can be a tour on itself, really telling you a lot of the organization of the town. For example, in this area you can find Corte delle Ceneri. Ceneri means ashes, because that's where they were producing them for then the production of soaps. Or, for example, like this one that we are following right at the moment, Corte Soldat, derives from the last name of a family that came to live in Venice. And this is the facade of the home that belonged to the family dating back to the 16th century. Around this area, during the night season, till not many years ago, you could see also women sitting outside the doors of their homes with a basket full of pearls on their knees. Pearls that had tiny, tiny little holes, hardly visible. So they had to use a special tool that looked like a big fork to string up the pearls. And then, of course, making necklaces that were sold around the shops of Venice. And this is Calle Giambattista Tiepolo. The name it's in honor of the famous 18th century painter who was born not far from here in 1696. As we are coming out in Fondamenta Sant'Anna, you will see a lot of very short doors. And this is to remind us that Venice is sinking. So in order to protect the streets from the flooding, we are raising them. And of course, then through time, the entrances are becoming shorter and shorter. Along the Fondamenta, the church and the convent of Sant'Anna. This is where the two daughters of the painter Tintoretto lived as nuns, and famous because they donated to the church an embroider made by hand and made of silk that represented the famous crucifixion produced by the father for the Scuola di San Rocco. The church was founded in 1242 and then renovated in 1634, and in the 1800s secularized and becoming firstly a Navy College, and then a Navy hospital. Now it's time to cross the long bridge named Quinta Valle that takes us to the island of San Pietro di Castello, where in the past the Cathedral of Venice was positioned. St. Mark's in the past was the private chapel of the Duke of Venice. In town, we always followed the Greek idea of the separation of church and state. So St. Mark's was the political center of Venice, and San Pietro di Castello was instead the religious center. From the bridge, it's possible to enjoy a rather enchanting view of the area and also not too touristy. In the background, the bell tower of the Church of San Pietro di Castello and the walls of the arsenal, which was the state shipyard from where the commercial military fleet of Venice came out. Along the canal instead, little old shipyards and also a lot of little boats tided along it. Sometimes as you're walking around, it's nice just to take a turn randomly and go and explore. In this case, we finding us in a little courtyard that still has the original pavement made of brick in a herringbone fish design, and also with the grass trying to peep out through the bricks and trying to regain its original spaces. Often in these little courtyards, it's also possible to see vases with flowers and plants decorating the area as if it's a garden. And what is beautiful, it's also the quietness and the silence. No one around. Often around town you can find little fountains with potable water. During the winter they are closed because otherwise they might freeze and the ice might break the pipes. But during summer it's always a good idea to carry a bottle with you so you can refill it for free. Then a beautiful bas-relief showing the Virgin Mary with baby Jesus and kneeling in front of them Saint Peter. In the past, the bas-relief was completely decorated with colors, but because of the weather, the salty air, now they're all gone and not visible anymore. Turning around the corner, you can admire a funny door decorated by a fisherman. And sometimes in the summer, you can see him sitting outside the door repairing his fishing nets. He also loves to decorate the interior of the windows with strange puppets and dolls. A little bit further down, then another window that during these days is housing a nativity. A nativity that takes place on water, so with boats carrying Jesus, Joseph, and Mary, and then another boat with the three wise men. And now we are finally in Campo San Pietro di Castello. Campo, as I mentioned at the beginning of the itinerary, means square. But in Venice, there's only one square with a proper name, and that is Piazza San Marco. All the other squares in Venice are campo, and campo means field, as they were covered with grass. When the squares were larger, maybe in the center there was a sort of path that was made of bricks, like in this case. Otherwise, it was grass. You could even find vineyards in the middle of the squares. You could find little orchards where they were cultivating fruit and vegetables. Because there was not many space, not many gardens, and anyway, the town had to be self-sufficient. So the aspect of Venice of today is quite different from what it was in the past. In fact, if you look at maps of the 1500s, you can actually see all these sort of green areas in place of the squares. Next to the church of San Pietro di Castello lies the home of the bishop, which is recognizable by a bas-relief that carries the hat of the cardinal and then those symbols of the Vatican State. Today, this building is used by private homes, and in the past, it was possible to reach the main courtyard and have a look around. But today, because of so many tourists, they decided to put a gate, so it's very difficult to get a chance to go and spy the interior. All around the square, beautiful, all the decorations, and then the bell tower, which is the only one in town that is covered with marbles. And this is to stress the importance of this building as being the bell tower of the cathedral of the town. The Church of San Pietro di Castello was founded in the 7th century, and it was dedicated to Sergio e Bacco. The aspect of today, it's instead that of a building of the 1600s, and it was designed by a pupil of Palladio. The church has a very big dome that measures 54 meters, only 4 meters less than the dome of St. Peter in Rome, designed by Michelangelo. And the dome was even hit by 2 bombs during the First World War. And now it's time to leave the island of San Pietro di Castello. And we're doing this by crossing a second bridge. From the center of the bridge is possible again to enjoy the view and to admire all these beautiful little boats tied along the canal, a canal that completely surrounds the island, that in the past was also referred to as Olivolo, maybe from the shape of the island that looked like an olive. From the center, it's also possible to admire the walls of the arsenal. The arsenal is really large, occupies 1/12 of the territory of Venice, and it's the only part of the town that is completely surrounded by walls. Walls that had to protect the secrets of ship making. Just before Campo Ruga, on the left-hand side, you can find a little under passage named Sottoportico Zurlin, which is interesting because it's the lowest in town. So in order to go through it, you really have to sort of bend your head. Zurlin was a family that was really rich, and one of the members of the family is even represented in one of the paintings, the Adoration of the Three Wise Men, inside the church of San Pietro di Castello. This is an area that I love. I like the atmosphere of days gone by, and I like also the cheerfulness of the laundry hanging from the lines, and then the perfume of soap that surrounds the streets. It's fun also to look at the children playing outside, and you can also hear the voices of women calling at each other from the window, and sometimes also elderly people playing cards in front of the bars of the area. This is Fondamenta San Gioacchino, which is facing the Fondamenta Sant'Anna. So basically we completed a sort of circle. In fact, now if you turn back, you can see the Church of Sant'Anna down there to the right. That's the pink building right after the bridge. So now we are almost ready to reach the Via Garibaldi, which is really a very lively part of Venice. And we are now approaching Via Garibaldi, which is a street that runs over a canal. And on the left-hand side, just before it, a little boat which is a sort of floating shop selling fruit and vegetables. The street was created in the 1800s by Napoleon, and after the Second World War was one of the most lively areas of Venice, where you could really find all sorts of products, and also where there were a lot of activities, good and bad ones, and also where you could come and dance, and where you could find the first jukebox of the town. Halfway of the Via Garibaldi, in the past, you could find the Church of San Domenico, a church that was demolished in the 1800s together with some other buildings in order to create the public gardens. The priests that were running the church were entrusted by the Pope Pio IV in 1560 the organization of the Tribunal of the Inquisition, and they were also in charge of the burning of all the prohibited books, something that was done every 29th of April over the bridge that was halfway along the Calle San Domenico. The bridge today is not existing anymore. So our itinerary stops at the Giardini in front of the statue of Garibaldi. In case you decide to come to Venice and do the tour in person, at this point you can reach the water bus stop of the Giardini, so the same place from where we actually started, or you can take a break in a nice cafe which is situated in the older greenhouse of the public gardens, a building that houses also a flower shop.
If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe, leave a comment, and share it. Bye guys, see you soon. Can't wait to show you more about this beautiful town. Ciao!